guys, what is up? Public here, back with another video, and today we kind of a quick one, but I wanted to give the promised video about our tier set coming in Season 3. I've delayed making this a little bit, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. The short answer is the set bonuses are still pretty early. It's still pretty obvious that we're going to see tuning to them. So while I will kind of share some early numbers and stuff, I think just recognize that I highly expect these to change a little bit. Although I would, the design of them is likely not going to change too much, if at all. So we're going to kind of mostly focus on that and give feedback both from that, and I'll link a forum post down below with those thoughts as well. So without further ado, let's kind of dive into what they are. All right, so for Season 3, they're actually trying out something kind of new, which I think a lot of us expected going into this expansion with hero talents and that kind of thing. Instead of Shadow Priest and Holy and Disc all having our own 2 and 4 set, they've instead changed it to where the hero talents themselves have 2 sets and 4 sets, which means every player will effectively get to work with, if you just play like one spec, you get to interact with both sets of tier sets depending on the hero talent that you're currently picking, which is pretty cool. We usually only have one set to kind of talk about and give feedback on. This time we have 2. So we'll cover Archon and Voidweaver set. So very generally, the Archon set, Halos generate an additional 10 insanity over 5 seconds. So you get a little buff when Halos actually spawn. This is every single Halo, right? So it's actually quite a lot of insanity while Halos are firing out. And Resonant Energy, so this is the thing that the debuff on mobs that causes them to take more damage from your spells from getting hit by Halo. That also increases the damage of Devouring Plague by 5%. So you get a base modifier for all your spells, and then Devouring Plague hits just a little bit harder with the 2-piece. Pretty tame overall. Kind of just giving us a bit more insanity during our window. Devouring Plague hits a little bit harder. Kind of, I mean, it's not really changing too much of visually or anything else like that. Playstyle wise, you're going to notice you get a bit more insanity. That's really kind of it. So nothing too crazy to talk about here. 4-piece adds a little bit more. So what it says is, while Power Surge is active, which basically this is just, if you didn't know, when you cast Halo, you then get a buff that creates the extra Halos for the next 15 seconds or whatever it is. What this is saying is, while you're in active Halo generation, every 2 casts of Devouring Plague extends that buff that generates Halos, basically. So you're effectively, usually you pulse Halos for the next 15 or 18 seconds or so. This is saying now you'll add more Halos after that. So this isn't actually, it kind of reads a little weird, but basically we're extending Power Surge, okay? So instead of spawning Halos for the first 18 seconds of your burst, now it's a little bit longer. So it's 23 or 25 seconds or something like that, right? Yeah, kind of weird, I think, in general. And, I think with the Archon set bonus, it's not super satisfying to just get longer. Effectively what this is doing is we're getting longer void forms, okay? And I think what's kind of sad about that is void forms lasting long is okay, but they're already kind of lasting a long time, and this is just extending that even further. On PTR testing with full gear, it's very expected that we're going to be able to hit 2-minute void forms and almost have 100% uptime on void forms, which is just kind of ridiculous for one cast of a cooldown to last that long without any meaningful gameplay, right? There is no ramping dot damage or ramping haste that we've had in the past with long void forms. And realistically, the punishing aspect is quite big here. If you have to stop to move or something, if you're not casting the correct spells, you're not getting that 2-minute void form, and that kind of leads to the entire reason why they kind of went away from that in the first place, is that playstyle can just be really punishing for players. And this is just indexing that a little bit too much, in my opinion. We don't need void form to last longer. That's not what Archon should be about. And again, Archon really doesn't make sense with Dark Ascension, especially now that you can only take Mind Flay, and Mind Flay Insanity is the biggest source of damage for Archon for the most part. So yeah, it's a weird set bonus. The Devouring Plague buff is kind of whatever. Devouring Plague really isn't that big of a deal. Again, this spec is really focused around Mind Flay Insanity, some Apparitions, and then Devouring Plague. So I don't know, I'm kind of disappointed overall with this set. I would honestly say to redo it. I don't know, I'm just not super happy with it, especially compared to Voidweaver, playstyle wise and gameplay. I think this is just lacking quite a lot, to be honest. So and yeah, and if like I said, already mentioned, I do have a whole feedback post related to Archon, if we kind of dive into that real quick. Numbers wise, it's about 4% for that 2-piece bonus we talked about. Combining that together, it's about 17%. So the numbers are there. Like for a tier set, 17% is pretty good. Like that's either, from what I've seen, I think that's like just above average, or at least like what a target might look like for this season. So numbers are there. It's just, I don't know, it just feels uninspiring and not exactly. I mean, Archon by itself already was kind of, the coolest part about Archon was that it made you want to play Void Form, right? Which is cool. But outside of that, yeah, guys, it generates halos. I don't know, whatever. So yeah, really don't have too much else to say other than that. Hopefully there's still some time to adjust it, but at least damage-wise, the numbers are there. Okay. Now, let's talk about Voidweaver. This one's going to be a little controversial, and we'll kind of get to the reason for that in a second. But let's go ahead and talk about what it actually does. So, the 2-piece says Void Blast damage is increased by 40%. That's actually insane. That's a massive modifier for Void Blast. Void Blast cast time is reduced by 20%. Okay, and then Void Blast cooldown is reduced by 50%. So basically, you kind of turn into a Void Blast machine gun just with the 2-piece, which is really cool, really fun to play with. If you didn't see my raid testing footage, I did stream that, and you're just getting out a lot of Void Blasts. Like, you're able to cast quite a lot more of these. Kind of lowers that need to pool Mind Blast because it's a lot more forgiving because it's cooling down faster. The cooldown part is easily the most feel good part of this set. The cast time reduction is fine. Like, you don't super notice this. It's one of the reasons why you can also afford now as Voidweaver to not have as much haste as usual. Now, if you stack too much haste, you'll hit the GCD floor, and this just doesn't do anything. But we're not hitting that, so that's part of the reason why I think Voidweaver is going to lean more into mastery and less into haste this tier. At least that's what it seems like. But the cooldown reduction is great. Like, you're just able to cast way more Void Blast than usual, which is really fun to play with. Now, the 4-piece says Void Blast now also causes Entropic Rift to grow. If you didn't know, right now Entropic Rift grows for every cast of Devouring Plague. So they're basically saying that, okay, now Void Blast does too, and you're able to hit that kind of max width of Entropic Rift way more easily. I think Shadow Priest really couldn't before. Discipline could, but definitely not Shadow. So the Rift is actually quite a bit larger now, which is really good for that ticking damage of the Rift, especially inside of AoE. So it's really fun. They also threw in a modifier where Collapsing Void increases that Rift's damage by an additional 20%. So as the Rift expanded, it was also doing more damage. So this is just saying that is now more effective. And then on top of that, it says the damage of your next Void Torrent is increased by up to 200%, which is a ridiculous modifier. So it's a 3x modifier based on the size of the Rift when it collapses. Which is really crazy. So basically, after the first time you cast a Void Torrent, every other one for the rest of the fight is basically buffed by 200%. This is a massive number, assuming you're playing correctly, or it's at least always pretty close. It's a 20% gap, so it's like 100, 120, 140. Pretty easy to get up there in these numbers. So yeah, Void Torrent is cranking. It's doing like 10 or 15% of your damage with this. Void Blast is cranking. It's just a wild set. And you can see that if we scroll down. Yeah, the 2-piece is worth 20% DPS, and combining them together is 45%. So yeah, it's safe to say this set is overpowered. There's just no other way to look at it. If anyone's been watching raid testing, you've probably seen Shadow Priest just smashing right now, and this is the reason why, okay? It's not because base Shadow Priests are too strong. It's literally just the set bonus. The set bonus is way too strong. I think like this 17%, these numbers look a lot lower, but I think 17%, like this is a much more realistic amount for a tier set. 45% is not realistic. So this just needs to be adjusted. I think there's lots of ways to do this, and I think hopefully, especially if you've played it, you'll agree that the cooldown reduction is really fun. Growing Rift is really cool to see. Like it's visually and gameplay and exciting. I hope that they keep that, and I think that they can stand to remove the kind of more egregious parts of the set that don't need to be there. Like, we don't need to increase Void Blast damage by 40% on the 2-piece. Like that's insane, right? Similarly, on the 4 set, we don't need Collapsing Void to increase the Rift damage. Like, adding this extra modifier is just nuts. And then Void Torrent's modifier being a 3x is gross, right? Like this could just say 100% and it would still be really strong. So I really hope that they, I think this set's very fun, and I hope they kind of look at this and say, okay, how do we rip some of the damage increase out of the set while keeping it fun and exciting, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video while we've made these feedback posts, because I want to make sure that they don't knee-jerk nerf base Shadow Priest because of this set. The set's the reason why we're looking so good right now, and I think this just needs to be tuned back, right? So I kind of gave them even a suggestion here to say, like, hey, make it this or something like this, keep the cast time, keep the cooldown reduction, keep the rift growing part, only make this 100%. And I think it stays to be a really fun set, and the power level gets toned down to what it should be. So overall, I'm really happy with gameplay of the Voidweaver set. Damage obviously needs to be tuned down, but I think that's really cool. And then opposite, I'm pretty happy with the strength of Archon set, but the design is just really boring. So both sets, I think hopefully we have some room to adjust going into Season 3. Let me know what you guys think, and please heart the forum post if you can to get more attention to this. Again, like I said, that is linked in the description below. Okay, that's all we have this video. Thank you so much for watching.